The story begins with a man getting out of his car. It was a beautiful afternoon, and he was heading to an important meeting about a potential job. As he approaches the door of the place he was told to go, something very strange happens. He sees the stairs covered in blood, and a man runs out from inside. The young man, who was wearing glasses, looked completely scared and was bleeding. He had been shot in his left leg, and while trying to run, he shouted to the other man not to enter the house because the guy inside was a lunatic. Despite this, he went in anyway. The man waiting for him inside was none other than Deadpool, Wade Wilson. Deadpool then tells him to sit down because he was expecting him. The house was a complete mess. Wade then started talking to the man who had just arrived, and that's when we find out what was going on. Deadpool wants to make a movie about his own life to make money. He clearly thinks everything is turning into a film and that his story would be really cool to be told on the big screen. The men who were going to his house were amateur directors looking to get the job of directing a film about his life. By the way, the man who had just arrived was yet another amateur director wanting the gig. Deadpool explains that the other two men who had been there before weren't good enough. They wanted to ignore Wilson's real story and tell it their way, which angered Wade. That's why he shot them. But the man who had just arrived said he was different. He only wanted to hear Wilson's life story. He didn't want to impose or change anything. He wanted to know the entire story so that the film would be true to the requirements. This conversation intrigued Deadpool, who was relieved that at least one of those directors wanted to make the film the way he wanted. Wade then told the man to get ready, because this was truly a very sad origin story. He said his story begins with him naked, inside a machine, feeling an insane amount of pain. He recounted that he ended up in an experiment in Canada because it was his best choice. He had been diagnosed with advanced stage cancer and knew he was going to die. That's why he volunteered for these experimental tests, as the alternative would be a slow, painful death from cancer, or a possible cure, and the chance to gain superpowers from a crazy test. Of course, he chose the test. It turns out that things went very wrong, and his body did not respond as expected. He indeed received superpowers, but his appearance terrified everyone. Somehow, the serum accelerated the multiplication of neoplasms in Wade Wilson's body, and now he was completely deformed and had no body hair. But that was the only side effect. His body could regenerate in an incredible way. During some tests, the scientist shot at Wade. He felt the pain of the wounds, but within seconds, he was fine again. His body reconstituted itself very quickly. The big problem, however, was Wade's appearance. This did not please the scientists, as his deformed body was very noticeable, and that would not be useful for the secret missions, which were the purpose of everything. The scientists tried various horrific procedures to try to make Wade's appearance return to normal. They believed that if his body were sufficiently injured, they could get the regeneration to fix everything. They even completely burned Wade's body, but that didn't work either. He endured all the pain of a third-degree burn, but when his body regenerated, he returned to the same deformed appearance. Because of this, he was practically discarded by the men until they could find a cure for this problem. So, they imprisoned him, leaving him in a dark, uncomfortable cell. That was driving Wade insane. After everything he had been through, being in that place made him feel even worse. Because of this, he decided to escape. One night, while a guard was walking past his cell, he provoked the man until he got very irritated. The guard entered Wade's cell to hit him, but of course, Wade managed to defeat the bully guard during the fight and ran down the prison corridors. As he ran, other guards appeared and shot at him. Wade felt a lot of pain, but his body recovered quickly, allowing him to keep running. Deadpool then tells us that after escaping that place, he decided to return to his life as a mercenary. However, this time, his skills were much more impressive than before, and he also decided to wear a mask, like other comic book characters. He said the problem was that as he became a particularly fantastic being, missions started coming his way. For example, there was the confrontation with Cable, the mutant from the future, who was very strong. But when Wade starts recounting his adventures as Deadpool, the amateur director interrupts him and says that he's already got enough of his heroic origin story. What he wants to know now is the more human side of Wade Wilson, so the director asks him to tell his story before he received his powers. He wants to know everything about Wade Wilson's life as an ordinary human. Deadpool then starts to recount that his former self, Wade Wilson, was a mercenary but worked with a moral code, as he only killed those he believed deserved to die. He says he killed dictators, crime bosses, and other low-life individuals. Additionally, he had a normal life. He was dating a woman named Vanessa, whom he loved very much. The problem arose when he received a letter from the medical center. After undergoing some tests, it was confirmed that he had cancer and needed to start treatment immediately. Vanessa tried to help him in many ways. She truly loved him and said she would fight alongside him the entire time to face this illness together. But Wade no longer had hope. He believed he was going to die and didn't want his beloved to suffer watching him slowly wither away. Because of this, he decided to abandon her and leave her life, rejecting the idea of being a burden to someone. Time passed until one day, while he was in a bar talking to another mercenary, Wade learned about the tests being conducted in Canada. It was then that he sought out those scientists and underwent all that torture. The amateur director interrupts him again and says that these extra details in the story were incredible, but he wants something more. He wants to know about Wade's life before he became a mercenary, or rather, even before he became an adult. He wanted to know what Wade's childhood was like. Deadpool didn't want to talk about it, but the director convinces him, saying that this would be the most important part of the film, as it would be where the audience would connect with him. Deadpool then begins to recount that in his childhood, he and his father were close. He says his father was a good person, and every time he came home from work, he would knock on the door and tell a joke to little Wade. This happened every day. As usual, when it was time, Wade would always stand by the door, eagerly waiting for his father. Until one day, he waited, and his father didn't come back. For several days, he went to the door, knocking to see if his father would respond, but nothing. Nothing worked, and his father never returned. Unfortunately, his father abandoned him and his mother. He simply gave up on the family and ran away. It turns out that Wade's mother started to fall into depression and became addicted. She tried to numb all her pain with alcohol, and Wade felt guilty, as he thought that if his mother didn't have to worry about him, she would be okay and move on with her life normally. So, when he was old enough, Wade left home and enlisted in the army because he felt like a burden in his mother's life. Thus, he gained prominence in the army as he was considered by his superior to be a natural sharpshooter with a great tactical mind. After a while, he left the army and began using his skills to earn money on his own, becoming a mercenary. But, as he had already said, he only killed those who he believed were deserving. The director then interrupts again and says that it's enough, that Wade has already given him the necessary material to make an excellent film. The story then cuts. Several months pass, and we see the world premiere of Deadpool's movie. The event is grand, very crowded. The director approaches Wade and tells him that he will enjoy the film, and that the critics have already watched it, and the feedback is great, with everyone praising it. This reassures Deadpool, who enters the cinema and starts watching his movie. But almost everything in the story he told has been changed. The director filled the film with unnecessary explosions that never happened in Wade's life. Additionally, he turned the torture Wade endured into a comedic scene. To make matters worse, the title of the movie was also wrong, as Deadpool is written as one word, but in the film, it was separated. Many other things in the movie were different from what he had agreed upon, and this irritated Deadpool immensely. He got up from his seat, and his urge was to start shooting everyone there. But he didn't do that. The most he did was leave the screening and blow up the director's car, which was parked outside. On the last page, we see that Deadpool had found his father's address years ago, but he had never had the courage to go there. However, he finally mustered that courage and went to meet him. He indeed found his father in a house in the countryside and took off his mask in front of him, saying that they had a lot to discuss about what had happened all this time. But that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning more about the human side of Deadpool, who, despite being a caricature figure, carries one of the saddest stories in comics. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button below, and let's work together to become the biggest nerd channel on all of YouTube. I'm counting on you.